At just 20 years old, Alexander inherited not an empire but a fragile kingdom, a battered Macedonia, hemmed in by hostile neighbors and shaken by the assassination of his father, Philip II. The throne was stained with blood, and enemies circled like wolves. Yet, within a decade, this young king would vault from the shadowed halls of Pella to the sun-blasted plains of Asia, forging an empire that spanned from the mountains of Greece to the edge of the mysterious Indian subcontinent. By the age of 30, Alexander the Great had conquered lands no mortal had ever dreamed to unite and died suddenly, leaving behind the largest empire the ancient world had ever seen. The story of Alexander is one of relentless ambition, savage battlefields, and epic daring. Raised in the crucible of war, Alexander was not only the son of a king but the student of Aristotle, absorbing the wisdom of the ancients from the age of 13. Philosophy, science, strategy, these were woven into the fabric of his soul. But the lessons of the sword proved just as vital. Under Philip II, Macedonia had become a military powerhouse, its phalanx unbeatable, its cavalry swift and deadly. Alexander learned to command, to inspire, and most of all, to win. When Philip fell to an assassin's blade, the world watched Macedonia teeter on the brink. Rivals doubted the young king's resolve. Rebellious city-states saw opportunity. But Alexander struck with ferocity, crushing uprisings in Thebes and Thessaly, his army marching in lockstep, unwavering. He demanded loyalty from Greece, and when Thebes dared defy him, he razed the city to the ground, a warning written in blood and fire. The message was clear. Alexander ruled by strength, and any who opposed him would pay the price. But it was Persia, the greatest empire the world had ever known, that drew Alexander's gaze. Darius III, King of Kings, commanded forces that dwarfed Macedonia's. Most would have bent the knee, but Alexander burned with ambition. He crossed the Hellespont in 334 BCE, leading an army of barely 40,000 into the heart of Asia. At the banks of the Granicus River, Alexander faced an enemy 5 times his number. Rather than wait, he charged headlong, his cavalry thundering into Persian ranks. The battle was a storm of spears and screams, and Alexander himself led the charge, sword flashing, cutting down enemy commanders. Victory followed victory. At Issus, Alexander faced Darius himself. The Persian host stretched for miles, a sea of men and chariots. Yet Alexander's tactics, bold flanking maneuvers, disciplined phalanx formations, shattered the Persian lines. Darius fled, abandoning his family and treasures. The world gasped. Macedonia had bested Persia's might, but Alexander was not satisfied. He marched south, capturing the legendary city of Tyre after a brutal 7-month siege. His engineers built causeways and siege towers, innovations that stunned the ancient world. The defenders fought with desperate fury, but Alexander's merciless assault broke them. When the city fell, he razed it, sending a message across the known world. None could withstand him. In Egypt, Alexander was hailed as a liberator. The priests declared him a living god, the son of Ammon, and he founded Alexandria, a city destined to become the heart of learning and commerce for centuries. But the desert winds whispered further, the riches of Persia, the mysteries of India. Alexander pressed east. At Gaugamela, the fate of empires hung in the balance. The Persian army, vast and terrifying, outnumbered the Macedonians perhaps 5-1. Darius sat atop a golden chariot, certain of victory. Yet as dawn broke, Alexander's army moved with impossible discipline. He feinted, drew the Persians out, and then unleashed his cavalry in a thunderous wedge, driving straight for Darius. The Persian lines buckled, the king fled, and Alexander seized Babylon, the jewel of the East. For 13 years, Alexander battled without respite, across mountains, deserts, and rivers. His men fought not just armies, but hunger, disease, and exhaustion. At every major battle, Alexander led the charge himself, risking his life at the very front. The sight of their king in the thick of combat steeled his soldiers, binding them in brotherhood. While enemies fled in terror, these warriors stood their ground, knowing that Alexander would never ask of them what he would not do himself. Yet, the deeper into Asia they marched, the greater the cost. Alexander's army faced elephant charges on the plains of India, battling foes who fought with unfamiliar tactics and weapons. At the Hyphasis River, his men, worn, scarred, and longing for home, refused to go further. The legendary conqueror stood on the edge of the known world, gazing into the untamed east, forced at last to turn back. Alexander returned to Babylon, the heart of his empire, weary but undefeated. He had never lost a single battle in over 15 years of warfare, an achievement unmatched by any commander in history. His empire stretched 2 million square miles over 3 continents, encompassing cultures, languages, and treasures beyond imagination. He had founded over 20 cities, most bearing his name, and he spread Greek ideas, art, and science wherever he marched. Hellenism, the fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures, became the legacy of his conquests, shaping the world for centuries. But fate, as ever, is merciless. In 323 BCE, at just 32, Alexander fell ill in Babylon. Some whispered of poison, others spoke of fever. Surrounded by his loyal generals, he lingered for days, the shadow of death growing longer. When asked to whom he would leave his empire, Alexander's legendary last words echoed, "To the strongest." Within months, his empire fractured, torn apart by the ambitions of his most trusted commanders. The great dream of unity collapsed into a storm of rival kingdoms, each vying for a share of the spoils. Yet, Alexander's legend only grew. His body was preserved, becoming a site of pilgrimage for centuries. Stories spread of his courage, his brilliance, and his ambition. The world he conquered was forever changed. Greek culture flourished in distant lands. Ancient cities bore his name, and the memory of his victories haunted the dreams of future kings. The greatest generals of Rome and beyond looked to Alexander as the model of supreme leadership and tactical genius. On blood-soaked battlefields, in the silent ruins of Alexandria, and in the hearts of warriors who longed for glory, Alexander's legacy endured. He was more than a conqueror. He was the embodiment of ambition, the architect of empires, and the most feared fighting force of the ancient world. His story is one of daring impossible odds, savage battles, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. But the question remains, what might Alexander have achieved had he lived? Would he have marched beyond India, forged new worlds, or finally found peace in the empire he built? The fate of the young conqueror is a mystery that still echoes through history, a cliffhanger that has enthralled generations. The legend of Alexander the Great endures, a testament to the power, the peril, and the passion that defined the ancient age of war.